me that not only was he aware of what he was doing by using that imagery, he embraces that imagery. And unfortunately, this became the #1 song on US iTunes. We have a problem in this country about race, and the biggest problem is we refuse to admit that it exists. Well,
leave it to Sunny Hostin and Whoopi Goldberg to make the racial point on this Jason Aldean song. So there's this song that's been causing an uproar, I guess, because Jason Aldean made a song called Try That in a Small Town or something like that. Full disclosure, I'm not a country music fan. I really don't listen to much secular music. So I listened to the song. And honestly, to me, it's not a good song. It's just me. Probably because I don't like country. So it doesn't do anything for me, right? But when I listen to the song, and full disclosure, I came from a small town in the South. I came from a small town in Mississippi. So I know about life in a small town. I also know about certain parts of that small town as a black man I could not go to and probably still can't go to because of the mentality of some people down there. But I will say that is much better than it was 50, 60 years ago. I will say that integration has finally caused positive benefits in that aspect. It's hurt when it came to education and other things, but it's caused more people's minds to be open to the reality that we're all the same. So that all that garbage of racism is starting to dissipate and is being pushed to the far extremes. Nevertheless, when you listen to this song, I can see both sides, honestly. I have to be truthful. As a biblical conservative, I tell the truth. I don't play the Republican side all the time. I definitely don't play the Democratic side. So I can see both sides. I can see where some people would get offended, even though they shouldn't. Honestly, people should not get offended. But leave it to The View, the ladies on The View, to stir up even more controversy on this song.
Singer Jason Aldean is getting backlash for the video of his song, Not in a Small Town.
First of all, Whoopi, what is in your mouth? You need to chew that thing, whatever's in your mouth.
Which critics are saying is racist. It's got lyrics, racist lyrics, and images.
Come on, Whoopi, that's disrespectful. That really is disrespectful, Whoopi. You need to spit that stuff out your mouth.
Aldean says the song's about unity, and he's talking about people taking care of each other. And I find it so interesting that it never occurred to Jason or the writers that that's what these folks were doing.
Stop lying, Whoopi. The Black Lives Matter Antifa people were not taking care of the people in their town. They were rioting because they wanted to create anarchy. Stop lying, okay? Stop lying. They're not taking care of their town, Whoopi. As a matter of fact, the Black Lives Matter people destroyed the inner cities. Tell the truth, okay? Stop lying. These people are so annoying because they lie about the truth of the matter.
They were taking care of the people in their town because they didn't like what they saw. Just like you talk about people taking care of each other in small towns. We do the same thing in big towns. You just have to realize that when you make it about Black Lives Matter, people kind of say, well, are you talking about black people? What are you talking about here? If we're talking about Americans taking care of each other, then it shouldn't be about Black Lives Matter. You should be able to show all the different things that have gone on in our country where people stood up and said no more. We do the same thing that small towns do. That's my 2 cents to that.
So this was, this was to me something where about half the people in my life see it one way and half the people in my life see it a different way. So I'm trying to kind of see what are we disconnecting on. I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt that his intent wasn't to, stoke division, glorify violence or racism. I'm gonna give him that benefit of the doubt. I don't know, but I'll say this, there was a line, so for the many folks who are offended by this, there's a line in it that says, try that in a small town, see how far you make it down the road. Around here, we take care of our own. So for a lot of my friends and family who are legal gun owners in small communities, they're like, yeah, that's what we do if someone breaks into a store. He's talking about the right to defend yourself. What I thought of when I read that was Ahmaud Arbery.
Okay. I don't know who she is. I guess she used to work for President Trump. She is horrible. That is good. You did not think about Ahmaud Arbery when you hear that lyric. Stop lying. You are a supposed conservative and you are bending the knee. You are kowtowing to the other ladies on that show because you want to stay employed by The View. So you'll say these outlandish. You don't think about Ahmaud Arbery. You probably hadn't thought about Ahmaud Arbery since the deal went down. You haven't. And most people on that panel haven't thought about Ahmaud Arbery. Only in the sense that he was killed by 2 white people. That's the only reason they think about Ahmaud. Most Republicans don't think about Ahmaud Arbery. They don't. If you ask most Republicans about Ahmaud Arbery, they can tell you who it is. They couldn't. And that's sad in and of itself. But stop lying and saying that you think of Ahmaud Arbery when you hear that line. Really? You don't. You don't.
Think of a black man in a small town in the South who literally just got shot for doing nothing wrong.
And that's true. That's true. That's true. And I didn't hear the uproar from my conservative brethren on that. That was disappointing. That's vigilante justice. And we don't support vigilante justice. We don't.
I think what becomes problematic is that there's a lack of recognition of what this means to about 50% of the country whose experience isn't Jason Aldean's. I like him. I've always liked his music. I'm kind of a country gal about like a quarter of the time. But this is also for the folks on the right who are defending this. They see the BLM riots, I think many can acknowledge protests and riots, that George Floyd's death and murder was evil. It was wrong. It was unacceptable. But so was the killing of someone like David Dorn, a black retired police officer who was defending.
Now, she's right about that. She's right. I agree with her on that point. Yeah, we didn't hear the same outrage when David Dorn, a black man, was killed. You want to know why? Because that black man was a police officer. You're not going to hear about that. The only time you hear about black people getting killed by white people is when the black person is a criminal. That's it.
His friend's store and was shot during the riots and aftermath of that movement. So I think if people of good faith can see both sides, they can see there is an issue with this song because of what it means to a lot of communities, but there is an issue of violence, of looting, of rioting.
Yes, but why are you linking it to black people?
Well, that's
that's the issue.
That's the issue.
And I can, honestly, I don't agree with Whoopi on much. And I can agree with her on that from this standpoint. Because when you watch that video,
Farmers are dropping their own crops for the day. A friend is in need, and they've come to help.
It's what this community and a lot of our communities stand for. Somebody needs some help, you'll get it.
you see the imagery, especially towards the end. It paints the picture of one side being altruistic, being American, being law-abiding, being the epitome of what it means to live in a small town. And then you see the other side that doesn't. I don't think he intended to be that way. I don't know. I'm not able to peer into that man's heart. I do know that racism is a spirit, and it's a spirit that's here because of the fall of man and it's of the devil. It really is. God is a God of unity. God is a God of love. God is a God of togetherness. He's not a God of division. The devil is the author of confusion and division. That's the devil. He wants to divide us based upon race, gender, sexual orientation. But when you watch that, you don't get a sense of togetherness in that video. You just don't.
The imagery is what becomes very problematic.
You can sing about there's a lot wrong here with this. This is a man who saw what happens when someone is out of control with their guns.
Yeah.
He was performing in Vegas,
Vegas.
and he saw people get. So I don't understand how he could be that disconnected. How people around him didn't say to him, hey, listen, you know what? Maybe there's a better way to do this because...
When the imagery invoked race, that's what was...
There's no reason to separate big city people from small town people. That, to me, is the divisive part of this song. I mean, it's a deplorable song and it's annoying.
Wow. A deplorable song and annoying. I wouldn't expect anything more from Joy Behar.
pleased that you are, and
Well,
I'm pleased that you
do
are.
agree that he should be allowed to say whatever he
Because
wants.
as a lawyer, when I put my legal hat on,
Yeah, okay.
I don't believe in censorship.
Right.
However,
Here come my favorite panelist on The View, Sunny Hostin. Let's see what she has to say.
this man is from Macon, Georgia. My father's from Augusta, Georgia, and Macon, Georgia. I spent many summers there. Yeah, both. I spent many summers there. It is one of the most racist places in this country.
How can you make that statement, Sonny? It could be. I don't know. I mean, do you have proof? Can you validate that? Stop throwing out these blanket, generic statements without any proof, Sonny. But she doesn't need any proof, because when you can throw out racism, you can throw the race card out. People are not going to question you on it because people are too afraid to call you out. Well, I'll call you out, Sonny. I grew up in the South, okay? I grew up in the part of America that would be considered quote unquote racist. And I didn't experience any racism. So where it existed, and I know how to function in that environment, but in talking about somebody actually coming to me and trying to hold me down, because you have to understand, we're not victims. We are empowered for greatness. As a Christian, as a believer, no white man, brown man, red man, yellow man can keep me down because I have Christ on the inside of me, okay? They can't do that.
So don't tell me that he knew nothing about what that imagery
didn't
meant
say he didn't
and
know
what
anything.
so I don't give him the benefit.
But I'm saying,
I don't give
along
the
with
benefit
him,
of the
more
doubt.
people should
The
also
other-
be
The other
held
thing
accountable.
is that what was evoked for me, which was, you're not going to get out of this town,
Yeah.
are those sundown
Yeah, don't let the sun
areas
go down on your
because
ass.
there were times when black people, my mother's in the audience today, thank you for coming.
Come on, Sonny, you don't think about that. Man, these people keep going back to 1950s and 60s like it's the way it was 50, 60 years ago. There's no more sundown towns anymore, Sonny. Stop invoking this stuff. They really, boy, I tell you, they love these kind of stories because they can invoke how racist America is.
And my mother and father, because they were an interracial couple, were run out of South Carolina by the KKK.
I believe they were. That's true. But interesting. Sunny is biracial. That kind of explains the passion that she has for pointing out racism. Is she doing this because she feels like she's lacking and trying to prove her blackness?
And my father is still scarred from that experience, and you are still scarred from that experience. So
We're
don't
all
tell,
still scarred from that experience.
I'm not scarred from that experience. I'm not, because I'm in Christ. I'm not scarred from that experience. I know it happened. I know it happened to my mother. I know it happened to my grandmother. My mother knew James Chaney. If you don't know James Chaney, he was one of the 3 boys that were killed from my hometown near Meridian, Mississippi, going towards Philadelphia, Mississippi. They were killed in the 60s. Look him up, James Chaney. Look him up. He was killed because he was trying to help establish civil rights in Mississippi. So I know about the history. I know it. But yet I don't allow it to keep me in bondage. I don't believe in the fact that America is systemically racist. Is the system that certain people want to prop up racist? Of course it is, because they benefit from it. It's more of a class issue than a racial issue. But they masquerade it as a racial issue to keep black people in bondage.
So don't tell me that not only was he aware of what he was doing by using that imagery, he embraces that imagery. And unfortunately, this became the #1 song on US iTunes. We have a problem in this country about race, and the biggest problem is we refuse to admit that it exists.
Well, don't
Oh, here we go, Sonny. The biggest problem is people like you keep talking about it. That's the biggest problem, Sonny. People like you keep exacerbating the issue of race when it's not as bad as it was 50, 60 years ago. Does racism still exist? Of course it does. It's always going to be here. No matter what happens, it's going to be here until Christ comes back. But people like you keep picking at the scab, and you don't allow it to heal. You don't allow it to heal. Come up with something productive when it comes to race. How about you talk about opportunities for black people instead of talking about how oppressed black people are all the time? People like Sunny really make me upset because they keep talking about this racism thing as if there's nothing black people can do. Like we need the white overlords to come and help us. Forget that. No, you don't. Put your life in the arms and the hands of God and Christ and watch it take off.